August 8, 1944, near Saintes, south of Caen, Normandy, France. The leather of his commander's gloves creaked as Hauptmann Michael Wittmann tightened his grip on the cupola rim of Tiger 007, sweeping the hedgerow-lined horizon through his Zeiss binoculars. His hand shook, not from fear, but from a realization that had been growing since dawn. They keep coming, dear God. They never stop coming. For 3 hours, his 4 Tiger company had knocked out Shermans one after another. 27 burning wrecks dotted the fields along the Confals Road. Every Tiger had taken at least 6 kills. By the tactical lessons he'd learned at the Panzertruppenschule, the fight was a clear success. The exchange rate was spectacular, nearly 7-to-1. Yet through the lenses, Wittmann counted 48 more Shermans pushing in from 3 directions. Fresh units with green crews, but full ammunition racks. Dust clouds behind them hinted at many more on the way. His 4 Tigers together had maybe a dozen armor-piercing rounds left. There was no fuel for bold maneuvers and no reserves en route. The arithmetic of destruction was now being written not in gunnery duels, but in production totals that made battlefield brilliance beside the point. What Wittmann confronted, what German tank commanders faced on every front, was no longer a battle, but a demonstration of industrial math that would grind the Wehrmacht down by sheer weight. Minutes later, Michael Wittmann would be dead. Tiger 007 destroyed, either by a Sherman Firefly of the 1st Northamptonshire Yeomanry or by Canadian armor. Historians still argue which. His last radio message, logged at 12:47 hours, captured the despair of every German tanker who met American output, ammunition spent, enemy supply without end. The tale of German tank superiority began on May 26, 1941, at the Berghof, Hitler's mountain retreat. Ferdinand Porsche and Henschel and Sohn brought prototypes for what would become the Tiger. Hitler, entranced by the big 88 MA gun and armor no Allied tank could pierce, ordered production on the spot. This tank, he told his generals, would equal a battalion of ordinary machines. 1 Tiger would knock out a dozen enemy vehicles. The Führer's command set Germany's fatal bet. Quality would beat quantity. Every Tiger would be a hand-crafted masterpiece, invincible on the field. Americans, Hitler assured his circle, could never match German engineering. Their tanks would be, as Goebbels sneered, Detroit tin cans on tracks. The first Tiger rolled out of Henschel's Castle Works on August 4, 1942. It consumed 300,000 man-hours. Workers fitted 26,000 individual parts. Master craftsmen hand-mated the transmission. Skilled welders spent days on the armor plates. The interleaved road wheel system, a marvel for spreading the tank's 57-ton weight, demanded precision only experienced hands could deliver. Oberst Wolfgang Thomale, watching early trials at Kummersdorf, wrote, "This machine is the peak of German engineering. No enemy can face it. If we can build 100 a month, the war is won." Germany never built 100 Tigers in a month. Peak output after 2 years of streamlining came in April 1944 at 104. By then, American factories were turning out roughly 2,000 Shermans every month. The American story began not with staff planning, but a phone call. On May 28, 1940, William Knudsen, ex-GM president, answered President Roosevelt. "Bill," the president said, "come to Washington. We need 50,000 planes and 50,000 tanks." Knudsen's reply defined U.S. production philosophy. "Mr. President, we can't build the very best planes and tanks, but we can build the most. And build them so any kid from Iowa can fix them with a wrench and screwdriver." The Sherman flowed from that idea. At a design session at Aberdeen Proving Ground on August 31, 1940, Ordnance laid out requirements that horrified traditional engineers but thrilled Detroit production men. Make it simple for inexperienced workers, make parts interchangeable across variants, use engines that can run on different fuels, weld armor instead of painstaking fitting, fit tracks a crew can change in the field, and cut a turret ring wide enough for future upgrades. Major General Gladian Barnes told contractors, "I don't want a perfect tank. I want a good enough tank we can build 1,000 of for every 100 the Germans build. Make it reliable, make it fixable, and make it by the tens of thousands." The contrast showed up in the factories. At Henchel's Castle plant, 9,000 skilled workers labored over Tigers. The shop floor looked like a medieval guild writ large. Masters oversaw apprentices. Each tank was essentially hand-built, with workers signing completed components, proud of their craftsmanship. Unterführer Franz Liehart, who worked there before being drafted, later recalled, "We spent 3 days just on the final drive. Every gear checked with micrometers, every weld triple inspected, identification numbers painted by hand. It wasn't mass production, it was art." Meanwhile, Chrysler's Detroit Tank Arsenal, opened September 15, 1941, told a different story. This plant covered 1.25 million square feet, bigger than all German tank factories combined. Instead of elite craftsmen, the workforce was ex-auto hands, housewives, teenagers, anyone who could learn to rivet or weld. Rose Will Monroe, later Rosie the Riveter, worked Shermans there. "I'd never seen a tank before," she said. 2 days of training and they put us on the line. Everything was in simple steps. I'd weld one seam, the hull moved, someone else did the next. We'd finish a tank in 4 hours. Detroit achieved what German engineers thought impossible, an assembly line for tanks. Using car industry methods, Chrysler broke the Sherman into modules. Sub-assemblies rolled on parallel lines, then came together at final assembly. From raw steel to finished tank took 48 hours. By December 1942, the numbers were already telling a story German officers refused to accept. The Detroit Arsenal alone was building about 896 Shermans a month, double what many German intelligence summaries believed. Across North America, 11 plants built Shermans. Detroit, Chrysler, saw 896 monthly. By December 1942, Grand Blanc, Fisher Body, 385, Lima Locomotive, 165, Pressed Steel Car, 320, Pacific Car and Foundry, 280, Federal Machine and Welder, 240, Alco, 3-10, Baldwin, 205, Pullman Standard, 385, Montreal Locomotive, Canada, 180, Angus Shops, Canada, 145, total near 30,500 a month by December 1942. German Tiger output that same period, 34. The ratio already stood around 103.1. General Major Heinz Guderian, Inspector General of Panzer Troops, saw these figures in January 1943 Intelligence and wrote briefly in his diary, "If even half true, the war is already lost." The production gap triggered second-order effects that multiplied American advantages. With thousands of Shermans, U.S. crews trained on real tanks. At Fort Knox, the Armored Force School had hundreds reserved just for training. Crews spent 12 weeks on their vehicle, fired thousands of rounds, drove hundreds of miles, and practiced maintenance until they could swap parts blindfolded. Private First Class Clarence Smoyer recalled, "We beat the hell out of the training tanks, drove them till they broke, fixed them, drove again. By the time we shipped out, I knew that tank better than my dad's tractor. Every sound had meaning. Every tool had a job. Germany's tiger training was the reverse. With total tiger production barely topping 100 a month at peak, dedicated trainers were nearly non-existent. The Panzer School at Putlos had 4 tigers for all training needs, 4 tanks to prepare crews for every tiger unit in the Wehrmacht. Gefreiter Kurt Kleine of Schwere Panzerabteilung 503 described it. We had 3 days in a real tiger. Most of our time was diagrams and wooden mock-ups. When our company finally received tigers in Russia, half the crew had never started a Maybach engine. Complexity made it worse. A Sherman had roughly 15,000 parts and needed about 50 tools for fieldwork. A Tiger had around 26,000 parts and required 230 specialized tools. U.S. crews could reach basic competence in 4 weeks. Tiger crews needed 3 months just to be minimally ready. Time Germany didn't have. D-Day, June 6, 1944, opened the proof. The Allies landed with 4,000 tanks, mostly Shermans, and had 8,000 more staged in England. Germany had built 347 Tigers total since 1942. About 430 were operational across all fronts. In Normandy, only 102 Tigers could be mustered. SS Oberscharführer in Schwere SS Panzerabteilung 101 saw the truth near Caen on June 7th. We destroyed 8 Shermans in the morning. By afternoon, 16 more stood in their place. We killed 6. By evening, fresh companies kept arriving. They came like ants, stamp out dozens, hundreds, thousands stood behind them. The replacement pipeline told the real story. Lose a Sherman and a new one rolled from British depots within 48 hours. Colonel Joseph Gilbreth's system kept 2,300 Shermans in reserve in England. Damaged tanks were fixed within hours by mobile shops or swapped for replacements. Lose a Tiger and wait weeks or months, if a replacement came at all. Each Tiger needed special rail cars. The trip from Germany to Normandy took 5 days in theory. Allied air attacks made it weeks. Of 45 Tigers sent to Normandy in June 1944, only 17 arrived intact. June 13, 1944, offered a microscope on the production war. Wittmann's dash at Villers-Bocage was mythologized as the peak of German tank prowess. In roughly 15 minutes, tanks under his command wrecked 14 tanks, 15 carriers, and 2 anti-tank guns of the British 7th Armored Division. Whether all were his kills or his company's remains debated, but German propaganda sold it as proof of Aryan superiority and Tiger invincibility. They left out the aftermath. Within 72 hours, the British 7th had replaced every vehicle from depot stocks. Wittmann's company, down 3 Tigers in follow-on fighting, would wait 6 weeks for replacements. Lieutenant Colonel John Jock Cloudsley Thompson later wrote, "Wittmann was brilliant, certainly, but brilliance runs out. Production doesn't. He could smash our tanks faster than we brewed tea. We replaced ours faster than he could reload. Numbers were only part of it. Each Sherman needed a steady flow. 150 gallons of fuel every 100 miles, 104 rounds of main gun ammo, 30 gallons of oil and lubricants, spare track blocks, road wheels, filters, plus food and kit for 5 men. U.S. logistics delivered, period. The Red Ball Express, August-November 1944, ran 6,000 trucks nonstop from the beaches to the front. On August 29th alone, Red Ball delivered 1,242 tons, 800,000 gallons of fuel, 3,000 tons of ammunition, supplies for 28 divisions. Each Tiger needed 650 gallons every 60 miles, 92 rounds, 100 gallons of oil, and specialized parts made only in Germany, plus premium fuel that was disappearing. German logistics buckled. A Tiger battalion moving 100 miles needed 40,000 gallons. more than many depots held. The Maybach HL-230 P-45 wanted high-octane Germany could scarcely make. By late 1944, many Tigers sat not from damage but from empty tanks. Shermans were designed for conscripts with basic training. A complete transmission swap took 4 hours. Tracks could be changed in 90 minutes. Engines in 6 hours. Everything was reachable without tearing the hull apart. Critics mocked the Sherman's sloped armor as thin, but it had a field advantage. Damaged plates could be cut out and welded back by any competent welder. Technical Sergeant Robert Early of 3rd Armored said, "The Sherman was like a farm tractor in armor. Any kid who'd wrenched on a John Deere could figure it out. We had replacements for everything, engines, trannies, turrets, tracks. Something broke? Unbolt it, bolt on a new one. We'd have a knocked-out Sherman running before the Germans finished diagnosing a Tiger. Tiger maintenance was a maze. The interleaved wheels, brilliant for weight, meant removing up to 9 to reach a damaged inner wheel. A 12-hour job. Ideal conditions. The 8-speed transmission demanded special tools and trained mechanics. The Maybach was powerful, but finicky. Feldwebel Hans Bauer of S. Peze Abt 5 recalled, "In Russia, we had a Tiger with transmission damage. The replacement was in Germany. It took 3 weeks to arrive. To install it, we had to pull the turret and needed a 15-ton crane. No crane. The Tiger sat useless for 2 months while Shermans rolled past daily. By mid-1944, production math created a cascading crisis. Each Tiger needed a 5-man crew of specialists. Commander, at least 6 months. Gunner, 4 months. Loader, 2. Driver, 4 on heavy tanks. Radio operator or bow gunner, 3. A full crew meant 19 man-months of training. Germany was losing crews faster than it could train them. When Tiger 007 burned near Sintho on August 8, 1944, taking Wittmann and his men, Germany lost 60 man-months of irreplaceable training and years of combat knowledge in a single hit. The U.S. had no such bottleneck. By 1944, Fort Knox graduated roughly 2,000 fully trained Sherman crews monthly. Standardization meant any crew could run any Sherman. Wounded troopers were swapped from a pool of 10,000 trained replacements waiting in England. Staff Sergeant Lafayette Poole, in his Sherman in the Mood, described the edge. "We lost our loader at St. Lo. Within 2 hours, we had a replacement who trained on the same model at Knox. He knew every rack and control. We kept moving. If Normandy proved German victory was mathematically impossible, the Eastern Front showed it as catastrophe. Operation Bagration, launched June 22, 1944, the 3rd anniversary of Barbarossa, saw the Soviets field 4,080 tanks against Army Group Center's 405, including only 29 operational Tigers. The Soviets, having learned mass techniques, built the crude but effective T-34 in 3,000 man-hours versus the Tiger's 300,000. By mid-1944, Soviet plants were turning out 2,000 T-34s a month. Destroy 3 and 5 more appeared, kill 5 and 10 arrived. Hauptmann Ernst Lindemann of S.P.E.S. Abt 505 wrote, July 5th, we burned 16 T-34s near Minsk. July 6th, 22 more. July 7th, 45 attacked. We killed 19, then ran out of ammo. July 8th, 60 T-34s, 2 Tigers operational. We withdrew. The Soviets adopted America's maxim, quantity has a quality of its own. They also received 4,102 Shermans by Lend-Lease, over 3 times the number of Tigers ever built. Italy gave German crews their clearest look at U.S. industrial power. Close terrain pushed fights to short range, blunting Tiger advantages, and German crews could watch replacement rates with their own eyes. At Monte Cassino, Oberleutnant Friedrich Bücher of S.P.E.S. Abte 508 logged Feb 15, destroyed 4 Shermans near Route 6. Feb 16, 8 new Shermans in same place, destroyed 3. Feb 17, 12 attacking. Feb 18, count 22 Shermans. We have 4 Tigers running, 12 rounds per tank left. The psychology was shattering. Gefreiter Helmut Wagner wrote home, "We are Sisyphus pushing the boulder. Every Sherman we kill is replaced by 2. We cut them down like wheat, and the field grows back overnight." American recovery added to the despair. The 16th Armored Recovery Battalion could pull and repair damaged Shermans faster than Germans could confirm kills. Captain Thomas Roberts said, "We'd hook a burned Sherman in the morning, have it at depot by noon, repaired by evening, back in action next morning. The Germans would mark it destroyed, then face the same tank 3 days later." The statistics became human in factories across America. At Detroit, workers knew exactly what their output meant. A banner over the line read, "Every tank we build saves a life." Mary Krivsky, a Polish immigrant at the Arsenal, captured the drive. "My brother was in Italy with 1st Armored. Every seam I welded might be the tank that brought him home. We worked 16-hour shifts during Sicily. Nobody complained. The line never stopped. The plant ran 3 shifts, 24 hours, 365 days. Christmas 1943. Voluntary overtime hit 95%. If someone called in sick, co-workers checked if they needed help. Absenteeism stayed under 2%, compared with 15% in German shops by late 1944. German factories lived a different reality. Allied bombers constantly disrupted output. Henschel at Kassel was hit 39 times between October 1943 and March 1945. Each raid shut Tiger production for days or weeks. Skilled men were drafted to fill combat losses. By late 1944, slave labor made up roughly 40% of the workforce. Guards were needed, and efficiency sagged. Inspector Friedrich Müller reported in November 1944, "Kassel builds 8 Tigers this month." 8. Americans build that many in 4 hours. We use slaves who sabotage. They use free workers racing to build more. We cannot win this math. Shermans ran on regular gasoline. 70 to 85 octane worked. The radial engine was forgiving, durable, and would burn nearly anything in a pinch. American fuel supply was vast. Texas alone pumped 100 million barrels in 1944. Standard Oil refined about 2 billion gallons of gasoline each month. Tigers needed premium fuel, at least 87 octane, for the Maybach to behave. Germany's synthetic plants produced inferior fuel that wore engines out. By late 1944, training fuel vanished. New Tiger crews often arrived never having driven their tanks. Fuel burn told the tale. A Tiger used about 2.75 gallons per mile on road, 5.5 cross-country. A Sherman, about 0.5 on road, 1.2 cross-country. Moving a Tiger company 100 miles took roughly 15,000 gallons. A Sherman company about 3,000. Oberst von Westernhagen of Schwer SS Panzerabteilung 501 summed up the absurdity. Des 16. Start of Ardennes. My Tigers have fuel for 60 kilometers. The objectives are 200 kilometers away. We're told to capture American fuel. How do we reach American fuel without fuel? The Bulge gave the final proof. Hitler gathered his last reserve, about 450 tanks, including 69 precious King Tigers, for Operation Wacht am Rhein. Facing them, Americans could field 8,000 tanks in Europe, with 6,000 more in reserve or training stateside. Early German gains seemed to validate quality. King Tigers of SSS Panzer Abt. 501 killed Shermans at over 2,000 meters. Individual crews chalked up piles of kills. Propaganda declared superiority confirmed. Within days, math reasserted itself. As Joachim Peiper's Kampfgruppe ran dry near La Glaise, replacement Shermans were already rolling from Antwerp depots. The 40 Shermans destroyed on December 17th were replaced by the 19th. The 60 lost on the 18th by the 20th. Patton's Third Army pivoted north with 350 Shermans on December 22nd. Within 48 hours, and despite losing 88 tanks, he had 400 operational again. Replacements outpaced losses. Peiper blew his Tigers to prevent capture. March 6, 1945, gave history its most filmed duel, Pershing versus Panther, by Cologne Cathedral. 500 meters away was the scene the cameras missed. 11 knocked out Shermans around the square, victims of a single Panther over 2 days. Within 24 hours, 15 new Shermans filled the same square. The Panther, damaged and dry on ammo, was abandoned. This pattern, German tactical win, American strategic win through numbers, repeated across the Reich. Feldwebel Gustav Schreiber, a Panther gunner who survived, later said, "Our company destroyed 258 enemy tanks, mostly Shermans, a glorious ratio. They replaced 258 in perhaps a week. We lost 12 Panthers and received 2 replacements in 6 months." Every tactical victory pulled strategic defeat closer. Beyond production totals lay the human math. America trained roughly 250,000 tank crewmen. Germany trained perhaps 40,000 for Tigers and Panthers combined. When a U.S. crew was lost, 5 trained replacements waited in depots. When a Tiger crew died, their expertise vanished. Sergeant Joe Saunders of 2nd Armored put it plainly, "We knew 50 more Shermans stood behind us. If we got hit, we bailed out, walked back, drew another tank, and returned to the line." The Germans knew every Tiger was irreplaceable. That knowledge, that we could absorb losses and they couldn't, won the psychological war. Crew quality diverged as the war dragged on. By March 1945, American crews averaged 6 months of training before combat. German Tiger crews, if they received tanks at all, averaged 2 weeks. Boys of 16 drove 68-ton King Tigers they'd first seen days earlier. Gefreiter Wilhelm Hoffmann of Espesse Abtgaster 5 and 12 described it. "I'd driven a truck in Hitler Youth. They gave me 4 days in a Panzer IV, then put me in a King Tiger. The commander had been a shop clerk 2 months earlier. The gunner had fired 5 practice rounds. We faced Americans who had trained for a year. The difference wasn't capability, it was philosophy. Germany chased engineering perfection. Each Tiger was a masterpiece. The 88 could kill any Allied tank at 2,000 meters. Its armor shrugged off most hits. Its transmission delivered power smoothly. The interleaved wheels spread weight perfectly. America chased production efficiency. Each Sherman was adequate. The 75 struggled against Tiger armor. The hull was vulnerable. The transmission was simple. The suspension basic, but good enough. And America could build 36 Shermans for the cost of 1 Tiger. William Knudsen, watching Sherman lines in 1943, summed up, "The best tank isn't the most advanced. It's the one that's there when you need it. A Sherman in France beats 10 perfect tanks on a drawing board." Albert Speer understood this too late. In his 1969 memoirs, he wrote, "We sought perfection and achieved paralysis. Every improvement delayed production. Every change required retooling. Meanwhile, Americans built the same basic tank in crushing numbers. They won through arithmetic, not elegance. Shermans hit 90% operational readiness. Of 100 tanks, 90 ran any given day. Mechanical issues were uncommon and quickly fixed. Simple systems seldom failed, and parts were everywhere. Tigers, by late 1944, managed about 35% readiness. Of 135 ran. Complex systems broke constantly. The transmission often needed major work after roughly 500 miles. Interleaved wheels packed with mud that froze on the Eastern Front, locking tanks in place until chipped free. Major Hans Kruger of S-Pez Opt 503 wrote in January 1945, of 45 Tigers on paper, 11 operational, 8 awaiting transmissions, 6 need engines, 12 need track work, 8 have multiple failures. We cannibalize 3 to keep 1 running. Americans abandon damaged Shermans and draw new ones. By early 1945, U.S. production created something beyond numbers: strategic freedom. Commanders planned, knowing losses would be replaced immediately. They could trade tanks for ground. They could treat Shermans as expendable tools. Omar Bradley said, "We knew we might lose 4 Shermans per Tiger killed. We also knew we had 10 Shermans for every Tiger. The math was simple. We could afford the trade. They couldn't." German commanders, by contrast, were paralyzed. Every Tiger lost shrank future options. Orders by March 1945 told Tiger units not to engage unless absolutely necessary. General Major Wolfgang Lang, commanding a battered panzer division, captured the trap. "I had 8 Tigers and 900 Shermans in my sector. If I revealed my Tigers, artillery and aircraft would race them. If I hid them, the Shermans rolled over us. We watched our end through periscopes." When Germany surrendered on May 8, 1945, the tallies finished the story. Germany: Tiger, 1 to 347, AUG 1942, AUG 1944. Tiger to Tone, 489, 492, John 1944, Mar 1945. Total Tigers about 1,839. America, M4 Shermans, all variants, 49 and 234. Feb 1942, Duel 1945. British and Canadian plants added 2,000 plus more. Allied Shermans, 51,000 plus. Ratio, roughly 27.7 Shermans per Tiger. But production counted only part of the equation. Operational reality, in May 1945, Tigers running with the Wehrmacht, fewer than 20. Shermans operational worldwide, about 35,000. Trained crews, German Tiger crews, fewer than 200. Trained American Sherman crews, 40,000 plus. In 1975, a Fort Knox reunion brought U.S. and German tank veterans together. Their conversation showed how deeply the math had cut. Otto Carius, Germany's second highest scoring tank ace with 150-plus kills, spoke frankly, "We fought mathematics, not Americans. I could burn 10 Shermans and 20 would appear. It wasn't combat, it was arithmetic. We were calculators trying to stop an avalanche with individual skill." Staff Sergeant Clyde Brunson, who commanded Shermans in 3 armored divisions after losing 2 beneath him, answered, "Otto's right. Most of us weren't aces and didn't need to be. We needed to be adequate and numerous. Wars are won by production lines, not heroes." The most telling moment came when former Oberst Hans von Luck asked the Americans, "Did you know? Did you know your numbers would overwhelm us regardless of skill?" Sergeant Ray Hopkins said, "We knew. Every replacement depot we passed held hundreds of new Shermans. Letters from home talked about factories running 3 shifts. You weren't fighting us. You were fighting the entire American industrial machine. We almost felt sorry for you." American mass production created ripples far beyond raw numbers. With thousands of surplus hulls, the U.S. could experiment. Specialized Shermans appeared constantly. Firefly with the British 17-pounder, Jumbo with extra armor, Calliope with rockets, Crab Mine Flail, DD Amphibious Dozer Blade, Crocodile Flamethrower. Germany could barely keep standard Tigers coming, much less variants. Each special project meant fewer combat tanks. The Sturm Tiger, Tigers converted to assault guns, numbered only 18, a fatal diversion. Spare parts illustrated the Gulf. American depots stocked around 50,000 Sherman items. Any component could reach any unit within 72 hours. Tiger battalions waited months, often cannibalizing runners to keep others alive. Technical Sergeant Mike Kozlowski, running a forward depot in Belgium, described abundance. We had warehouses of everything: engines, transmissions, guns, tracks. A unit called "We Loaded a Truck." I threw away more parts for lack of storage than German units ever saw. Tankers lived in different worlds. Americans knew tanks were plentiful. Survival mattered more than heroics. PFC Clarence Smoyer recalled the standard brief: "Your job is to live and keep pushing. If you see a Tiger, call artillery or air. Don't be heroes. Heroes die. We have more tanks than trained crews. Stay alive, and we'll keep you in steel." German Tiger crews felt the opposite pressure. Each Tiger was priceless. Each crew was precious, yet they were ordered to chase impossible kill ratios that turned bravery into bookkeeping. Feldwebel Karl Braumann, a Tiger gunner in SP is Out 502, put it bitterly: "We had to kill 10, 20, 30 enemy tanks to justify our Tiger's existence." The pressure was unbearable. We weren't soldiers, we were accountants. Behind the total stood infrastructure that decided outcomes. American factories were untouchable. Detroit, Chicago, Pittsburgh, full output, free from bombing. Workers arrived rested, fed, motivated, materials flowed. Quality control caught defects before tanks left the line. German plants worked under constant threat. Henschel at Kassel was bombed 39 times. Mayen at Nuremberg 27. Workers spent nights in shelters, days clearing rubble. Trains were cut by air raids. Quality slid as exhausted workers and forced laborers made mistakes. Hans Müller at Henschel recorded the cascade. October 1944. Last night's raid destroyed heat treat. Tiger plates must go to Essen if the trains run. Essen was bombed Tuesday, Dortmund Thursday. We have 200 hulls waiting on armor. Perhaps 20 finished this month. American lines had no such burdens. Fisher Body's Grand Blanc Arsenal ran 4,500 people in safety. Regular shifts, good housing, hot cafeterias, schools for their kids, stocked stores for their families. Mass production also created learning curve gains Germany couldn't match. Every 1,000 Shermans cut unit cost by 8%. Improvement spread across all factories instantly. By 1944, Detroit built Shermans 60% faster than in 1942, with fewer workers. Lieutenant Colonel Robert Young's analysis credited worker suggestions. A woman at Pressed Steel found a weld sequence change that saved 4 minutes per tank. Across the system that freed 3,300 production hours monthly, enough for 40 extra Shermans. German production suffered reverse learning. As veterans were drafted, quality fell. Material shortages forced substitutions that complicated builds. Bombing dispersed work to small shops, killing efficiency. Tigerman hours rose from 300,000 in 1942 to about 450,000 by late 1944. Each Tiger cost more time and labor as war dragged on, the opposite of the American curve. The Tiger's tech edge carried hidden costs. The Maybach needed 120 unique parts. The intricate transmission demanded special tools. The high-precision gun required careful upkeep. Every advantage added complexity. The Sherman's simplicity was its edge. The Ford GAA shared parts with trucks. The transmission was a beefed-up truck box. The gun was adapted from an anti-aircraft piece. Everything proven, reliable, fixable with common kits. Master Sergeant Tom Williams of 4th Armored said, "We patched Shermans with truck and Jeep parts. Need a fuel pump? A truck pump would do. Electrical trouble? A Jeep alternator fit? Tigers needed exact parts from specific factories. We used whatever worked. American abundance became a psychological weapon." Captured German crews were shown tank parks with hundreds of fresh Shermans, toured depots where burned hulls were rebuilt in hours, and witnessed a casual waste that spoke of limitless resources. Hauptmann Friedrich Schultz, captured after his Tiger died near Arras, recalled a visit to a replacement park. They showed us 500 new Shermans waiting for crews. The American officers said they received 500 a month for this sector alone. I knew then every Tiger we had killed was meaningless. We were bailing the ocean with teaspoons. Those men returned via exchanges or escapes and spread the truth, crushing morale among Tiger trainees. By winter 1944-45, the maintenance gap was absolute. U.S. units kept roughly 90% of Shermans running despite weather and combat. Tiger units struggled to maintain even 20% without fighting. The 56th Heavy Tank Battalion's January 1945 diary reads, "Strength 45 King Tigers, operational 8, awaiting repair 37. 12 need engines, none available. 15 need transmissions, 2 available. 10 need multiple parts, none available. Cannibalization, authorized to maintain minimum strength." Meanwhile, 37th Tank Battalion, 4th Armored reported, strength 53 Shermans, operational 51, 2 awaiting repair, will be done by nightfall. Replacement tanks in depot, 15 crew replacements on hand, 3 full crews plus specialists. April 1945 delivered the ultimate demonstration. As American forces crossed the Rhine, they left behind hundreds of damaged Shermans not worth fixing given the flood of replacements. German units, desperate for armor, tried to recover and repair abandoned Shermans for their own use. The irony was complete. The Wehrmacht that began the war boasting of technological superiority ended up scavenging the inferior American tank. Tigers, too complex to keep alive without the German support network, were abandoned for lack of fuel or minor faults. Shermans, simple and robust, were pressed into German service. Oberst Wilhelm Müller, commanding an improvised Kampfgruppe around Nuremberg, reported, "My command is 3 Tigers, 1 running, 8 captured Shermans now repaired, 12 assault guns, and sundry vehicles. The American tanks are easier to keep going than ours. We fight American tanks with American tanks." The war ended not with staged duels, but with American columns rolling past silent German armor. Tigers sat by roads, dry of fuel, out of shells, stripped of spares. Their crews, the best trained tank soldiers of their age, walked home defeated. Sherman columns kept moving, every loss replaced from the endless stream through Atlantic ports. Their crews, adequately trained and utterly confident in supply, barely glanced at the abandoned German giants. Touring the wreckage, Dwight Eisenhower observed, "We did not defeat German tanks. We defeated German production. Every Tiger they fielded was a tactical victory that cost them strategic strength. Every Sherman we lost was replaced before they finished counting." Final accounting made the math stark. Production time: Tiger, roughly 300,000 to 450,000 man-hours. Sherman, about 17,000 to 48,000, corrected from earlier low estimates. 1 Tiger equaled 6 to 26 Shermans in labor. Cost: Tiger, about 250,000 to 300,000 Reichsmarks, 1945 values. Sherman, 44,556 to 64,555. August 1945, U.S. catalog. Currency games make direct comparison fuzzy, but the spread is obvious. Fuel, Tiger burned about 2.75 gallons per mile on road. Sherman, about 0.5. One Tiger's road fuel equaled roughly 5.5 Shermans. Maintenance. Tiger often needed 10 hours of work per hour of running. Sherman about 1 hour per 10 hours of running. One Tiger's upkeep equaled 100 Shermans. Training. A Tiger crew demanded at least 19 man-months. A Sherman crew about 5. One Tiger crew equaled 4 Sherman crews in training time. Post-war officers on both sides agreed. The Tiger may have been the finest single tank of the war. The Sherman was merely adequate in tank-on-tank fights. But wars aren't decided by excellence in isolation. They hinge on systems. Colonel Robert Cameron, writing the official U.S. history, concluded, "The Sherman succeeded not in spite of its mediocrity, but because of it. Simplicity enabled mass production. Reliability enabled continuous operations. Standardization enabled instant replacement. The Tiger failed not in spite of its excellence, but because of it. Complexity choked mass production. Temperamental systems cut readiness. Uniqueness blocked replacement." General Major Friedrich von Mellenthin put it more bluntly, "We built 147 Tigers. They built 49,134 Shermans. Everything else is commentary." Behind the charts were human costs that exposed the price of Germany's quality over quantity creed. Tiger crews, knowing their tanks were irreplaceable, often fought to the last rather than abandon them. Of roughly 8,000 Tiger crewmen, fewer than 2,000 survived, a casualty rate near 75%. Among some 250,000 American tank crewmen trained, about 6,500 died, a rate around 2.6%. The philosophy that seemed to prize machines over men actually saved lives through abundance. Sergeant John Irwin, who lost 3 Shermans under him, explained, "We were taught tanks are expendable, crews are not. Bail out fast, walk back, get another." Germans treated Tigers like gold because to them they were. They died trying to save machines. We lived by leaving them. The Tiger versus Sherman production war set principles that shaped the post-war world. The United States proved that industrial capacity is the ultimate weapon. The ability to produce, supply, and replace faster than the enemy can destroy cancels tactical disadvantage. The Soviet Union took note. In the Cold War, it embraced mass production. The T-54-55 became the most built tank in history, over 100,000, twice Sherman totals. Simplicity, reliability, and numbers marked Soviet armor doctrine. Germany, learning from defeat, abandoned Baroque perfection for practical sufficiency. Post-war Leopards emphasized reliability and ease of maintenance over maximal specs. German industry, rebuilt under occupation, absorbed American production lessons, and became Europe's workshop. At a 1985 Fort Knox reunion, veterans closed the book on a Tiger versus Sherman. Otto Carius offered perhaps the most honest verdict. The Tiger was a masterpiece. In a tournament of single combat, it beat anything. But wars aren't tournaments. The Sherman was a tool of industry, and industry won. We cut Shermans like grass, but the grass grew faster than we could cut. That is not the Tiger's failure or the Sherman's triumph. It is the reality of industrial war. Sergeant Wardell Henderson, who commanded 5 different Shermans through France and Germany, gave the American view, "I never wanted a duel with a Tiger. One-on-one, we'd lose. But we never fought one-on-one. We fought 5-on-1, 10-on-1, with artillery, with air, with replacements waiting. The Tiger was the better tank. The Sherman was the winner's tank. I'd rather be alive in a Sherman than a dead hero in a Tiger. Today, restored Tigers fetch millions. Only 7 runners exist. Restored Shermans sell for tens of thousands. Hundreds still operate worldwide. Even in preservation, the production gap endures. At the Patton Museum at Fort Knox, a Tiger-Eye sits beside an M4A3 Sherman. The placards read, Tiger-Eye, one of 1/347. This tank destroyed an estimated 40 Allied vehicles. Sherman M4A3, one of 49,234. Tanks of this type liberated Europe. The math couldn't be clearer. In 1989, Friedrich Schultz, former Tiger commander, returned to Normandy for D-Day's 45th anniversary. Standing above Omaha Beach in the American cemetery, he told the veterans gathered, "We came with the world's best tanks, certain of our superiority. You came with good enough tanks in overwhelming numbers. We fought with excellence. You fought with arithmetic. In war, arithmetic wins. We built 1,147 Tigers. You built 4,934 Shermans. Those aren't just statistics. They are the difference between dictatorship and democracy, scarcity and abundance, defeat and victory." The crowd, American, British, Canadian, and German, stood silent. The mathematics of war had been reduced to its essential truth. Germany built the best tank of the Second World War. America built the most. In the calculus of industrial conflict, most beats best every time. The Tiger was an engineering marvel, a symbol of quality over quantity, but also a strategic sinkhole, a monument to the fallacy that tactical excellence can cancel industrial inferiority. The Sherman was a compromise, a good enough tool, a triumph of procurement over perfection, but also a war winner, a strategic masterpiece, a monument to the power of industrial democracy. Germany made 347 Tigers, each a marvel that could dominate any field it entered. America rolled out 4,934 Shermans and buried the Third Reich beneath an avalanche of adequate tanks with well-supplied crews. The numbers tell the story. Everything else, as Mellenthin said, is commentary. In the end, Tiger versus Sherman was never really about tanks. It was about production philosophy, industrial capacity, and the math of modern war. Germany lost in Detroit's plants long before it lost on Europe's fields, defeated not by better tanks, but by more tanks, not by superior quality, but by overwhelming quantity, not by tactical brilliance, but by strategic arithmetic. The Tiger endures as a monument to engineering excellence. The Sherman endures as a monument to production power, and the ratio, 49,4 to 1,347, remains the only number that truly mattered. Proof that in industrial warfare, the assembly line beats the craftsman's bench every single time.